Before Rome admitted there was a war, there were bodies on the Appian Way. They hung in intervals along the road, mile after mile, crucified where every traveler between Capua and the capital would be forced to look. The message was not subtle. 6,000 men, displayed as proof that the Republic still held power over life and death. The revolt was over. Order had been restored. But the scale of the punishment betrayed something Rome did not want to confess. For nearly 2 years, an army of enslaved people had defeated Roman forces again and again. They had broken chains, seized weapons, and turned the Republic's own roads into corridors of fear. At their center stood a man Rome preferred to describe as a fugitive and criminal, Spartacus, though what frightened the Senate was not a crime of passion or greed. It was the sudden collapse of control. The rupture began not in the Senate House, but in a gladiator school in Capua, a training compound owned by Lentulus Vatiatus, where men were purchased, conditioned, and prepared to die for spectacle. Gladiators were assets, valuable, trained, and closely guarded. Their labor generated prestige and profit. Their violence was choreographed and contained. Then containment failed. Ancient sources suggest around 70 men escaped. They seized kitchen knives and improvised weapons before capturing real arms from a passing wagon. The details vary. Our accounts come from writers decades later, including Plutarch and Appian, but all agree on one fact: a small group of enslaved fighters fled into the countryside and chose not to scatter. They moved toward Mount Vesuvius. At first, Rome treated the incident as a local disturbance. Escaped slaves were common enough. Gladiators were dangerous, but not political. The Senate did not dispatch legions. Instead, a praetor was sent with a militia force, insufficient, unprepared, and overconfident. The men on Vesuvius did not behave like fugitives. They fortified positions. They trained. They raided surrounding estates, gathering food, weapons, and followers. Rural Italy was dense with enslaved laborers. Plantation agriculture had expanded dramatically after Rome's conquests in the Mediterranean. War had flooded the peninsula with captives. Wealthy landowners relied on gangs of enslaved workers to maintain estates. The revolt found fertile ground. When Roman forces attempted to blockade the mountain, Spartacus and his companions improvised. They descended steep slopes using ropes fashioned from vines, flanked the besieging troops, and attacked from the rear. The Roman force collapsed. This was the moment Rome began to understand the stakes. The danger was not that 70 gladiators had escaped. The danger was that they had defeated Roman authority in open engagement. News traveled. Slaves across southern Italy joined the uprising. Shepherds, agricultural workers, miners. The force grew into the thousands. Leadership emerged from among the fugitives. Spartacus, identified in later sources as a Thracian, appears to have had prior military experience. Crassus, likely Gallic, commanded a substantial contingent. Whether their goals were unified is unclear. Some ancient writers suggest Spartacus intended to lead followers out of Italy, across the Alps, and disperse. Others imply more ambitious aims. The evidence does not allow certainty. What is clear is that Roman commanders underestimated them again. Another praetor was defeated. Then a consul's army suffered humiliation. Armed forces composed largely of enslaved people were routing Roman units on Italian soil. That fact alone destabilized assumptions underpinning the Republic's power. Rome's dominance rested not only on legions, but on the belief that resistance was futile. Now resistance was winning. The Senate responded by elevating the crisis. 2 consular armies were dispatched. Yet coordination faltered. The rebel force maneuvered skillfully, exploiting terrain and Roman overconfidence. At one point, Crassus separated with a large contingent and was killed in battle, a reminder that internal division existed. Spartacus reportedly held funeral games in Crassus's honor, forcing Roman captives to fight. Whether this detail reflects reality or later embellishment is debated, but the symbolic inversion would have been unmistakable. The war was no longer a matter of escaped property. It was a military confrontation with political consequences. Why did Rome struggle so profoundly? Part of the answer lies in misclassification. The Senate hesitated to define the uprising as a war. To do so would acknowledge that enslaved people constituted a political force capable of challenging the state. By framing it as banditry, Rome delayed committing its best commanders and disciplined legions. Another factor was geography. Southern Italy's terrain favored mobile forces. The rebels avoided static sieges. They moved rapidly, striking supply lines and retreating before legions could consolidate. But beneath strategy lay something more destabilizing: the exposure of dependence. Rome's wealth relied on enslaved labor. Vast estates were staffed by people with no stake in the Republic's survival. The revolt illuminated that vulnerability. If tens of thousands could mobilize, what prevented more? As the rebellion advanced northward, it appeared at one moment that Spartacus might indeed attempt to cross the Alps. Ancient narratives suggest he reached as far as Cisalpine Gaul. Why he turned back remains uncertain. Some argue his followers preferred plunder in Italy. Others speculate logistical barriers. The decision altered the war's trajectory. Remaining in Italy meant continued confrontation. By 72 BCE, the Senate appointed Marcus Licinius Crassus to command. Wealthy, ambitious, and determined to restore order, Crassus approached the conflict differently. He reimposed discipline on Roman troops through harsh measures, including decimation, executing 1 in 10 soldiers from units that had shown cowardice. Whether applied exactly as later writers describe is debated, but the intent is clear: fear would be redirected inward to restore obedience. Crassus fortified positions, constructed defensive works, and aimed to contain rather than chase. When Spartacus moved south toward the Strait of Messina, possibly seeking passage to Sicily, itself a region with a history of slave revolts, Crassus attempted to trap him through extensive fortifications across the peninsula's narrowest point. For a moment, it worked. The rebel army was contained. Yet Spartacus broke through part of the lines during winter conditions, exploiting weaknesses. The war dragged on. Supplies dwindled. Internal cohesion strained. Some factions split again, weakening the overall force. Meanwhile, another figure loomed: Pompey the Great, returning from campaigns in Spain. The Senate authorized him to assist. Crassus understood the political implications. Victory would not only end the revolt, it would define reputation. If Pompey arrived in time to claim credit, Crassus's authority would diminish. Power calculations layered over military urgency. In 71 BCE, the final engagement occurred in southern Italy. Details are fragmentary. Appian describes Spartacus attempting to reach Crassus directly in battle, cutting through centurions before being surrounded and killed. His body was never definitively identified. The anonymity served Rome's narrative. Without a corpse displayed in triumph, Spartacus remained both defeated and unconfirmed, a leader erased in death as much as in life. Thousands were captured. The crucifixions followed. Pompey arrived in time to intercept fleeing remnants and wrote to the Senate claiming he had ended the war. Crassus had won the decisive battle, but political credit was divided. Both men used their roles to advance careers, eventually securing the consulship together. Justice, in any formal sense, was not the objective. Suppression was. The revolt did not produce reform of slavery. There was no structural reconsideration of dependence on coerced labor. Instead, Rome intensified control. Surveillance increased. Fear operated in both directions. Masters wary of collective resistance, slaves reminded of collective punishment. Yet the consequences extended beyond slavery. The war elevated Crassus and Pompey into the highest tier of Roman politics, setting conditions for future rivalries. It contributed to the concentration of military authority in ambitious individuals, a trend that would destabilize the Republic in the decades ahead. While the revolt itself did not cause Rome's eventual transition from republic to empire, it formed part of a broader pattern: crises empowering strongmen. What did Spartacus intend? Here the historical record fractures. Plutarch portrays him as disciplined and restrained, discouraging indiscriminate violence. Other sources emphasize brutality. Modern interpretations sometimes project revolutionary ideology onto the revolt, framing it as a war against slavery itself. The evidence does not confirm such a unified political program. The movement was heterogeneous, composed of individuals with varying goals: escape, survival, vengeance, perhaps freedom beyond Italy. There is no manifesto, no preserved speeches, only accounts written by members of the society that suppressed the revolt. Rome's attempt to erase the rebellion did not mean silence. It meant reframing. By labeling the conflict as a slave war, servile and criminal, Roman writers preserved hierarchy in language even as they recorded defeat. The scale of crucifixions functioned as historical punctuation. This is what happens when order is challenged. And yet, the very need for such spectacle revealed insecurity. States built on concentrated power depend on legitimacy as much as force. When legitimacy fractures, when those at the bottom withdraw compliance, the response often escalates. The Republic could not negotiate with Spartacus without acknowledging political agency. It chose annihilation. There remain uncertainties we cannot resolve. The precise size of the rebel army at various stages. The degree of internal disagreement. The authenticity of specific battlefield maneuvers described decades later. Even Spartacus's background is partially obscured. Was he once an auxiliary soldier who deserted? A captive from a prior campaign? Our sources disagree. What is documented is the fear, the extraordinary mobilization of resources, the political maneuvering among Rome's elite during the crisis, the punishments inflicted to deter repetition. In the end, the Appian Way became both warning and confession. 6,000 crucifixions announced that Rome had restored control. They also testified to how fragile that control had briefly become. Crimes of power rarely remain confined to their immediate actors. They expose structures. They reveal dependencies. They force institutions to choose between reform and repression. Rome chose repression. The Republic survived the revolt. It did not survive the century. The memory of Spartacus persisted not because Rome celebrated him, but because Rome feared what he represented: the possibility that those denied power could organize, adapt, and strike at the core of authority. The state erased his body. It could not fully erase the question his revolt raised. How stable is a system that depends on force to silence its foundation? The crucifixes along the road answered in one way. History, over time, answered in another.